I'm going to ask Selectman Goldstein to tell us about what I thought was a very successful and moving Martin Luther King Day event yesterday.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman DeWitt. I am very proud of the event that happened yesterday. It was the result of many weeks of hard work by a very, very dedicated celebration committee. And for everybody's benefit of their knowledge, you know, it's not just a matter of logistics and scheduling to put this event together. Members of this committee are all people very deeply devoted to the cause of racial equality, and there's no aspect of that program that doesn't take into account Dr. King's message and the message that we should be sending out to the committee, to the community. So I want to especially recognize the efforts of that committee, and it consists of Malcolm Cawthorn, who was also our Master of Ceremonies, and also what I'll call our high school wrangler. He was responsible for getting all our high school participants there and make sure that they were prepared, and I thought they all did.
And he teaches history.
And he's a product of the Brookline schools, and he's a teacher at the Brookline, a history teacher at the Brookline High School, and I thought he did his usual spectacular job. Rob Daves is a town meeting member and basically puts the program together single-handedly, did a spectacular job. Lloyd Gelino, our Chief Administrator of Human Relations in the town, and his brand-new staff member, whose name is Rebecca Joachim, and the two of them did a spectacular job of administrative support. Lynette Glover, a lot of people know her. She's a real estate broker at Hammond Residential, and she did a great job, especially when it came to our keynote speaker, Liz Walker, Reverend Liz Walker, who happens to be Lynette's best friend. So she's the one who got her for us, and
a former Brookline resident whose son went to Brookline High School.
Yeah, I'll talk about Liz in just a second.
And the Lincoln School.
Bobby Nabel, who I would say is our spiritual influence. She is the person probably most in tune with the messages of Dr. King, most familiar with all of the writings of Dr. King, and really helped us on the program part of it. Larry Oney, who many of you know is a member of the Human Relations Youth Resources Board, and did a wonderful job. Also, Betsy Shaw-Gross and Rita McNally, who two stalwart participants in Brookline affairs, and I thank them all, as well as, what's your name again? Mr. Kleckner, who leads us in his usual way of excellence. Just in closing, I'll say that Liz Walker, Reverend Liz Walker, our keynote speaker, was just fantastic. I thought she was entertaining, she was spiritual, she was funny, she was moving, she was full of energy. And I thought it was perhaps the best of the keynote speakers for this event that I'd heard. I enjoyed listening to her immensely. Three choral a cappella groups from the high school, Notify, Testosterone, Perfect Pitch, were really great. And I want a special shout out to Perfect Pitch, who did one number that they picked, which was a Wayfaring Stranger, a spiritual. They prepared specifically for the event, and I thought that was one of the absolute highlights of the program. And lastly, I'll shout out to our participants from our high school Sojourn program. So these are, Sojourn, for those of you who don't know, is a program that sends a group of high school students every year down to Mississippi to retrace some of the important steps of the freedom marches, who really devote weeks and weeks of their academic career to studying the civil rights movement and studying Dr. King and his works and his efforts in particular. And they all prepared some excerpts from various King speeches and excerpts from certain secondary sources as well. And they did their usual spectacular job as well. I hope that everybody enjoyed it. It was the first time I was ever involved in this. Former Selectman Jesse Mermel had the reins on this for a few years, so it was a new break-in for me, and I learned a few things along the way, and I pledge to make next year's program even better.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything?
Oh, it was very good.
Right. I just would like, I feel obliged to say this because it was so striking to me, and other people mentioned this to me, and that is that the readings from Dr. King seem to be as timely today as they were 50 years ago, talking about disparities in income and education and opportunity, and particularly, I think, what we're seeing right now in terms of income disparity was right on the mark. So, this is still Climate Week, and there will be events during the week, especially next Saturday at Town Hall all day. I'm going to remind everybody to reduce, reuse, and recycle in every way you can. There's information at brooklineclimateweek.org. And tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. in this room, the Override Study Committee will hold a public hearing to present their findings with regard to potential overrides, and we'll hear more about that later this evening from Selectman Binka. And on Thursday at 7 p.m. in the Devotion Auditorium, there will be a community meeting on the proposed Devotion School renovations and feasibility study with the architects, Superintendent Lupini, Devotion staff, and it will be open to the public for public comment. And I should also say we have a cold weather alert from our Department of Public Health. There's information posted on the web. But there are warming stations available throughout the town at the Brookline Senior Center, the Brookline Housing Authority, in the public libraries, and at the Health Department. If people are in need of assistance, there is an emergency number at the Brookline Health Department, 617-730-2300, if you need more information. And I believe Commissioner Papasturgeon is out there somewhere. Maybe he'd like to give us an update on the snow. I gather we have had the call to the residents, giving them information about an upcoming parking restriction.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. We do have a snow emergency declared for 8 p.m. tonight. All cars have to be off the public way, no parking on the public way between 8 p.m. tonight and noontime tomorrow. We're anticipating 8 to 10 inches of light powdery snow, mostly in the overnight, but I am anticipating that tomorrow morning's commute will be fairly rough. So because of that, we're trying to get as much snow cleared off of the road before the traffic beats it down in the morning. I spoke to Dr. Lupini earlier. I'm not sure where he stands with school cancellations as of yet. I haven't seen any notification on that, but we have opened our emergency operations center at the Municipal Service Center. It's manned by the Police Department and the Public Works Department and the towing company going forward. So,
And just for everyone who's watching, will you explain about the parking restriction?
Yes, there is no parking on the public way from 8 p.m. tonight at all. So if your car is on the public way, you know, there will be a couple hours leeway, but after 10 p.m., more than likely, it will be towed.
And we've heard from members of the public that there's some confusion about what the public way actually means. And I understand that that would include people who have actually paid fees for overnight parking either along the median on Beacon Street or in town-owned lots, and those cars could be towed as well. Is that correct?
We don't generally tow from the lots
Okay.
or the reservations. We're more concerned about the main thoroughfares themselves. We want to get the roads plowed. We will be concentrating on the reservations and parking lots probably once the storm winds down tomorrow morning. So those we'll take care of separately. But your car cannot be on the public way on the thoroughfare.
Okay. Other questions for the commissioner? Okay, thank you. We'll have you back in a minute. Okay, any other announcements from members of the board? Then let's move.
Oh, I should
Sorry.
just announce
Go ahead.
that my diversity, the Selectmen's Diversity Committee, which was going to meet tomorrow night. We've postponed that meeting for a week because people were interested in coming to the override study hearing. And I want to just ask, is that going to be upstairs here?
That will be here.
In this room, right?
In this room.
Yeah.
And is there, I mean,
there's-
Selectman Waschinsky and I were some of the people out in the hall at your last presentation, unable to get in the room.
Which was in the school committee
Yeah.
room.
But
And that will be an overflow room.
Okay, because that's what I was going to
It will
ask
be
you, because
televised there.
a lot
And
of,
it is being broadcast, though. This one will be BATV'd, so people can watch it at home if they like, or if they can, if they have access.
because I'm hearing around town a lot of interest in this
Mm-hmm.
hearing tomorrow night.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the miscellaneous calendar, the minutes from January 14th. Any additions or corrections?
Very minor.
Okay.
And I've already provided some.
Let's send that along. Did you have something? Okay. All right, then I move we approve the minutes from January 14th as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And next item, Mr. Quigley, the contract for Devotion School feasibility and schematics.
Yes, good evening. For your consideration tonight is a contract with HMFH Architects of Cambridge, Massachusetts, for the feasibility and schematic design of the Devotion School in the amount of $1,093,135, and also contract amendment number 1 in the amount of $106,865 for a survey of existing conditions, geotechnical investigation and report, hazardous material survey and report, traffic and parking study, and other scope changes to the contract.
And Mr. Quigley, I understand this contract includes the various additional consultants who will be needed for this project, which is a complex one, is that correct?
Yes, it does. But again, this is only through feasibility and
Sure.
schematics.
Right, but I'm looking at a list of maybe 20
Many, yes.
additional? Yeah, it's not just the, I want to point out, it is not exclusively to the architectural firm, that's all.
Yeah, they have, as you can see, fire protection, plumbing, HVAC, electrical, all of the various design disciplines that would be needed for a project of this size and complexity.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Quigley? I know it's a big number. Yes, Selectman Daley.
Yeah, it was unclear to me why we were amending the contract that we haven't even signed yet.
Well, it's, the reason is because these items are outside of the contract, but they're necessary to the project, and they're necessary at this point of the design. We need to do we need to get the traffic study going, we have to have a survey and geotechnical work now in order to inform the design as we go forward. We can't wait on those items.
Okay, well, I will just say for future reference, those seem like pretty obvious things that need to be done, so I would think that they should all have been in the one contract.
This is the MSBA contract, which is actually a very good contract, but
Okay.
any amendments have to be done separately.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
We've been pretty much told
Okay.
how to do this.
When do you expect we'll see some preliminary drawings, or?
I would expect that probably around the first week of March.
Great, thank you.
All right, we ready? All in favor of approving and executing a contract in the amount of $1,093,135 plus amendment number 1 in the amount of $106,865 with HMFH Architects in connection with the design of feasibility and schematics for the Devotion School, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Quigley.
Thank you very much.
We now have a proposal for alternate managers at Osaka Japanese Restaurant. Are there any questions from members of the board?
No, but I'm recusing myself on this, please.
Very well. Then I move that we approve the application of Koto Japanese doing business as Osaka Japanese Restaurant holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common victualler, 14 Green Street, to appoint the following employees, who have, by the way, been approved by the police department, to be alternate managers, James Choi and Xingyang Chen. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
To a business
Oh, and-
relationship, I abstain.
And Selectman Goldstein abstains. Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Then we have an item involving an amendment to a contract for the LED lighting. Mr. Ditto, is this a misunderstanding on our part?
Nope, not in your part.
Okay.
Okay, on December 17th, the board awarded and executed a 4-year contract with LED roadway lighting in an amount a little over $1 million, $1.2 million almost. And as part of that vote, you also authorized $300,000 to be spent this upcoming year for this, the transfer of the LED lights. After we took a more comprehensive look at how we would roll this program out, and we identified the streets that we were going to do this upcoming year and took a more accurate count, we realized that we needed closer to $350,000. So we're back here tonight to see if we could increase that authorization from $300,000 to $350,000.
So we're getting more for our $50,000. It's not that the price has gone up for the same work. We've added, assumably, 1/5 more.
Yes,
We're getting it sooner.
yes.
Right, so the amount of the contract isn't affected, we just, the timing of,
Right.
We're paying more, we're paying earlier, right?
Yes.
Is that the right way to put
I
it?
presume we have the budget for this?
Any other questions? Then I move that we amend the board's vote of December 17th, 2013, that's a correction, with the approval of the contract for LED roadway lighting with Halifax NS for the purchase of LED streetlight fixtures to increase the FY14 approval from $300,000 to $350,000. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye,
Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Ditto. Go get your lights.
I will.
Next is an agreement with Beta Incorporated. It's additional consulting to the, relative to the development of Brookline Place. Ah, Mr. Ditto,
Yep. right
you're
here.
back.
Yes, this is a request for review and approval of 2 contracts. The first one is with the Beta Group, and both these contracts have to do with the development of Brookline Place by Children's Hospital. And both these contracts are going to be, are funded by Children's Hospital.
These are under the category of peer review contracts, is that correct?
Exactly, yes. So we have Beta Group in the amount of $23,000, and we also have with Nelson Nygrid in the amount of $9,750.
Questions for Mr. Ditto? No? Okay, seeing none. I move that we approve and execute agreements in the amount of $23,000 with Beta Group Incorporated and in the amount of $9,750 with Nelson Highgrade for peer review of transportation studies relative to the development of Brookline Place. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And finally, we have a couple of temporary wine and malt beverage licenses, which I will do as a group unless there is someone who wishes to hold one. I move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverage license to Pine Manor College in connection with a reception on January 28th. And I move that, that's the only temporary
that's
wine
it.
and malt. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And finally, we have a letter to be submitted on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to the Zoning Board of Appeals with regard to the board's position on the application for a comprehensive permit at Hancock Village. And there was a second draft of that letter at your places tonight. I hope everybody managed to pick it up. It's printed on letterhead. I don't think it's substantially changed, but I can tell you that if you look on the reverse side of the draft, basically page 2, there's one line added at the end of the paragraph at the top of the second page, starting with the word "if." And item number 3 was added under the list of selectmen's priorities after the first draft. And I believe the shade trees are added to item number 1 compared to the first draft. Questions? Oh, are you looking for
I
it?
think I'm looking at the
Here,
old version.
you can look at
Okay.
mine.
Yeah, let me just add, I actually have questions about whether mass development has the authority,
Yes.
the legal authority to finance this project, and that is obviously an issue that is going to have to get raised somewhere along the way. But
That wouldn't be in the context of this
probably
letter.
not.
This is to,
Yeah, I think this is
this is
a-
to the ZBA.
This is to
Probably
the
not.
ZBA, and it's meant to be a general response to the
Right.
presentation that was made by the applicant. So, yes, Selectman Benka, we take your concerns seriously, and perhaps we'll figure out how we could appropriately convey that information.
Right.
But I don't think the ZBA would have
No, I think
authority.
you're probably right.
But yes, thank you for reminding us that it was an issue. So, can we take a vote on the letter, because it has to be submitted on February 6th, and I just want it to be approved. We all aboard?
Yep.
All right, all in favor of, sorry, I move that we authorize the submission of a Chapter 40B, whoops, that's the wrong thing. Technical assistance, all right, it's a two-part. Two-part, all right. There is a separate request for technical assistance to give a grant to the Board of Appeals to get consulting services, should they need them. And that was part of the first item in the, it was what was in your original packet attached to the draft letter. So did everybody have a chance to look at that? And I think it's pretty straightforward, and it just simply provides support to the ZBA, which they may need. So, all right, we can do this in two parts. I'll first move that we authorize the submission of a Chapter 40B Technical Review Assistance Application. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley? Aye. Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And second, I move that we authorize the chairman to execute a letter in the final draft form that we saw tonight to the Zoning Board of Appeals, conveying the board's position on the application for a comprehensive permit by the residences of South Brookline 1. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Next, we have a request for a vacancy in the rec department. Yes, Ms. Paradis.
Hello, Lisa Paradis, Recreation Director. I am here to gain authorization to hire for a building custodian. It's a revolving fund position. You may remember I was here just a few months ago for the same position.
Yes.
And,
Which
yes.
we don't like to have happen so quickly.
Well, it was all for a good reason. The police department stole my
I
favorite,
know,
one of
we
my
heard
great
that.
employees, yes. So,
And you might want to resist future.
well, and I have to say, Marvin Oliveris worked for the Recreation Department for 20 years, since
Yeah.
he was 16, and he was a valued, beloved employee, so the police department is gotten a wonderful guy, so.
All right, well, I'm
We're
glad
having fun.
you've provided good training. Questions with regard to filling the vacancy? Then I move that we authorize filling a vacancy in the position of building custodian in the Recreation Department. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Good luck. And then we have a fire department chief. It's not like you're trying to take a person from another town department, but
No,
tell us
but if
about
I
it.
could, I would.
Yeah, right. You probably would, wouldn't you?
I'm here before you tonight to seek offer of employment to James Dermot Loftus. He was a firefighter. I came to you earlier in the year that he resigned a year ago. He ventured out on his own. He realized it was in his best interest to come back to the fire department. He left in very good standing, had a good record. You granted the conditional offer of employment. He has since passed all his requirements, his medical, physical, psychological testing, and today he finished his PAT exam with the state. So he's passed all his requirements, and we would like to hire him back and start him ASAP.
Okay. Questions for the chief? Seeing none, I move that we authorize the rehiring of former firefighter James Loftus. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
And next, we are going to have an update or a review of our FY 2015 budget objectives.
Good
Is
evening.
this going to include? Nope.
No,
Okay.
that's for Selectman Benka, but I can get it started while
All
we
right.
discuss this. So in front of you, you have a draft of proposed FY15 objectives for the Board of Selectmen. I'm just looking for any comments that you may have. If you want to submit them to me before next week, I'll take them up until Thursday. We've got the MMA conference on Friday, so if you submit them on Thursday, they'll make it into the packet for the weekend. Otherwise, I'll take them either next Monday or now if you have any that you have thought about, so.
I'm gonna
Okay,
have to get-
questions?
I'm going to have to get back to Melissa on this one myself.
Okay. Seemed pretty clear to me. Melissa, remind me again, when do you need to get feedback?
So if you want something to go out to the board in time for the weekend packet, I'm going
Right.
to need them by Thursday. Otherwise, Monday.
Okay, all right. And theoretically, they could go into a Monday packet. if-
Yeah, I just want them
Yeah.
voted by next Tuesday. That's the goal.
Okay,
So,
all right. They need to be on the calendar for a vote on the 28th, right? Yeah. All right. Questions from members of the board? No? All right. Well, in that case, we'll take these under consideration, and next item is further discussion about what may or may not have impact in FY15 from the update on the Override Study Committee. Selectman Benka, you have the, you have both the floor and the
And hopefully the screen.
screen, yes.
Shortly.
We're hoping you have the screen,
Here we
too.
go.
I can see the letters.
Ah, yeah.
Got to
Yeah.
turn down the lighting, I think.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to provide an interim report on the work of the Override Study Committee. As you know, this board appointed that committee on August 20th of last year. My co-chair, Susan Wolf-Ditkoff, is here. If you have any questions or comments, I think both Susan and I can respond to them. But I do want to, at the beginning, give public thanks to the members of the committee. And I want to name them. Janet Galbart, Ann Connolly Tolkoff, Lisa Serafin-Sheehan, Carol Levin, Carol Kamen, Beth Jackson-Stram, Michael Glover, Tim Sullivan, Jim Sturgis, Sergio Modigliani, Lee Selwyn, Alberto Chang, Kevin Lang, Cliff Brown, and Chad Ellis. In the period since you appointed this committee, we've broken into 8 subcommittees and task forces, and I'll identify those in a minute. There have been 10 full committee meetings, 66 subcommittee meetings, and really significant individual work, analytical work, research work, interviewing of town and school officials by committee members, work that they've brought back to the subcommittees and to the full committee. We are making this interim report today. There will be a public hearing, as you mentioned, tomorrow here in this room at 6 o'clock. And the information gathering and analysis will continue after that. The subcommittees and task forces that we broke into are the municipal subcommittee, the schools subcommittee, which has within it 2 task forces, one that is looking at school programs and another one that is looking at the population of the schools, including the non-mandated populations within the schools and also special education. A capital task force, which is focusing on obviously capital building issues. A revenue task force, which is looking at potential non-tax revenues or non-property tax revenues. Fiscal policy task force, which is looking at some of the town's fiscal policies, including our bonding policies, to determine whether there might be a more cost-effective way to do some things. Personal benefits, pensions task force, obviously self-defined, and a demographic task force that is looking at some of the demographic projections for the longer term. The starting point, the context within which this committee began, was the scope of a potential override. And the idea behind, if there were an override, the idea would be that the override would cover a 3-year period so that you would not need another override possibly for another 3 years. If on the assumption that that there will be not an override in May of 14, but there would be a bridge budget, which has been discussed by Town Administrator Kleckner and Bill Lupini, the Superintendent of Schools. On the assumption that you go in that direction, you would then be looking at an override that would cover fiscal year 16, 17, and 18. And what you'd need to do, obviously, is to cover the most expensive year of that, which would be fiscal year 18. And if that were the case, the override could look something like this. There would be a base case school deficit, including some projected collective bargaining, of $4.5 million. This is what is sometimes referred to as a structural deficit. In addition, the schools have proposed to catch up and to enhance some programs to catch up with enrollment growth. This second item would be items like nurses, guidance counselors, psychologists, the literacy program, and so forth. That would have an annual cost of $7.3 million in fiscal year 18. The third proposal is to enhance technology. That would have a cost of $2.2 million in fiscal year 18. So the total annual amount would be a tax increase beyond the regular Proposition 2.5 tax increase of $14 million for operating expenses. In addition, there would be capital items to account for the devotion school, a proposal to expand Driscoll, and a proposal to expand the high school. The latter in really far more undeveloped stages at this time than the devotion school project, which we just voted on this evening. And even the devotion school project is in a feasibility and schematic phase. But for the purpose of giving some idea of the potential magnitude of an override, We're assuming $110 million for devotion, 30% MSBA funding for that, so it would essentially be a town share of $77 million. That would be funded through a debt exclusion, effectively an override, but one that would run off after a 25-year period of the bond. The expectation is that this, with this override for devotion, it could allow, within our regular CIP, funding for the expansion of Driscoll in the high school, obviously depending on the need and the amounts and how great those amounts are. So this is obviously a tentative figure now. We don't even have a final number for devotion. But assuming $110 million and an override only for devotion, that would add $5.3 million annually at the assumption of a 4.75% 25-year bond of debt carrying cost. So all of this together would be a total annual override, potentially, using numbers that are still really being examined, of $19.3 million. What is the implication of that? It would be an 11% tax increase in addition to the annual tax increases allowed by Proposition 2.5. On the typical single-family home, which has an evaluation of about $1.1 million, it would be a tax increase of $1,175. A typical condo, a tax increase of $340. Both of those figures assume the residential exemption applied. On the typical commercial property, again, an 11% tax increase, a tax increase of $2,380.
And this is on top of the normal 2.5.
Right. Under Prop 2.5, without any override, the taxes can increase, the total tax levy can increase by 2.5% plus new growth. And new growth has run roughly 1%, give or take, over the years. So without any override at all, without any debt exclusion, the total tax levy, one could assume, could increase about 3.5%, give or take. And this, an override or a debt exclusion would be in addition to that. So obviously the numbers speak for themselves, and I will say that the Override Study Committee, part of its charge and part of its work in the future is to evaluate the elements that are part of this proposed tax increase. We received a number of them recently, and there are some updated numbers that the Override Study Committee has received. So it will be looking at the elements that are part of the proposed override. But its other charge is to see whether there are potential non-property tax revenue sources and potential savings which could be brought into play to offset some of these tax increases and to mitigate the impact of a potential override. And those really take three forms. Number one is, and I'm going to now turn to this. So we sort of defined what the issue is, and now we're going to turn to what some of the potential ways to address that issue. One question is, are there other potential property-based taxes that we could look at other than the annual property tax levy? Are there other potential revenue sources? And are there other potential sources of savings? And both of the latter two are on both the town and the school side. And I want to make very clear that these, what you're going to hear now, are topics that have been discussed and that are under consideration. These are not recommendations of the Override Study Committee. The Override Study Committee has not voted to recommend any of these at this point to the Board of Selectmen. Indeed, the subcommittees of the Override Study Committee have not voted to recommend any of these to the full committee. So as I made clear at the beginning, this is an interim report of the Override Study Committee, and therefore I want to make very clear that these are items for consideration and discussion. These are not recommendations. So what are some other property-based taxes? Well, there are two that have been identified. The first is the Community Preservation Act. This is also a tax increase. It's a tax increase on your annual property tax. This could substitute, theoretically, for a portion of an override or debt exclusion. It has certain restrictions that apply. At least 10% of the amounts raised must be used for historic preservation, 10% for open space, and 10% for affordable housing. You don't have discretion to put 100% in anything you want, or even 100% in any of those three categories. At least 10% of the amount must go into each of those three categories. The potential leverage of the Community Preservation Act is that it could theoretically be used for some planned capital programs that the town is already looking at. And it has the benefit of leverage that the state matches a portion of the funds. For the purposes of discussion at this point, the Override Study Committee has assumed a 25% state match. That amount, it's been up to 100%. It dropped to 25%. Last year it was 50% because of one-time infusion of state money. We're assuming 25% for discussion purposes. So essentially, for every dollar raised, there could be $1.25 of monies available to the town. The disadvantage is that there are only some capital programs that might be eligible for this. And one disadvantage is that if work is done on a historic building, it has to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation, which can substantially raise the cost. This might provide funding theoretically for some park projects and things of that sort, and perhaps also for some capital building projects. Another item that has been discussed is a real estate transfer tax. Rather than having an annual tax increase, this is a one-time tax increase, or a tax imposed when somebody buys a property. And the amount that we have looked at is a very small percentage, 1/10 of 1% or 2/10 of 1%, as a one-time charge for, depending on how you look at it, entering Brookline or leaving Brookline.
Entry fee.
Now let me turn to some other revenue sources. These are generally non-tax revenue sources. What you see here are on the municipal side. First is a potential increase in parking meter rates. Parking meter rates are now at $1 an hour. That could be raised to $1.25 an hour, which would match Boston's rates. I will note that I received, and I don't know if Susan received, an email from a former Transportation Board member saying you should raise it to $2 an hour. But the number that the Override Study Committee has been looking at is $1.25 an hour. Another potential non-tax increase is an increase in refuse fees, currently $200. Increasing that by $25 to $75 would still keep us below the cost of providing solid waste removal. An increase in parking fines, not a huge dollar amount, but another potential source of revenue. increased for commercial parking rates. These are the placards that merchants can get. It is believed that there's some potential to increase those to some extent, and/or to make those more sensitive to the area in which they're being issued, that some areas might command a higher rate than other commercial areas of town. The next one, again, also not a huge amount, institute fee for temporary on-street permits. The number that's been discussed is $1 a day for somebody when they want to come in or call in and get a permit for a contractor. Increase of library fines, increase of recreation department fees, and there are obviously a variety of recreation department programs, and the potential amount would depend on the current revenue from that program and the cost of running that program. There's one program that I'll refer to later, which is a Sewell early education program that now is run by the Recreation Department in the Sewell building. That is priced substantially below the market at this time, and it's believed that the price of that could be increased. And there's also a discussion about possibly combining that program with the Brookline Early Education program run by the schools in order to potentially find some capital efficiencies. Both the library and the cemeteries have endowment funds. Those contributions could be increased, and cemetery rates could be increased. There's a belief that there is some ability to increase those rates, still stay below the actual costs of running the cemeteries, and still be competitive. We looked at the Personnel and Benefits Subcommittee has looked at personnel costs. The 2008 Override Study Committee recommended that the total compensation package remain, never exceed Proposition 2.5 limits. That would include collective bargaining increases, steps, lanes, benefits. There is, I think, very likely to be a recommendation that that policy really be adhered to. We, on the Override Study Committee, on the Personnel Benefits Committee, has looked at other elements of collective bargaining agreements other than direct compensation, such as how sick leave is handled and the sick leave banking, and that, Selectman Daley, as you know, is something that also arose in the context of the Audit Committee. It emerged in the Override Study Committee, and that is just one of a number of non-direct compensation issues that are being looked at. Brookline is now paying 83% of health insurance costs. The Mass average for Mass communities is at 70%. Any such change would have to be collectively bargained, but each percent is a cost of approximately $270,000, or conversely, a saving of approximately $270,000, and we're now about 13% above what the average is for Mass municipalities, according to the Mass Municipal Association. The last bullet on this page is to educate and incentivize the use of HMOs rather than PPOs or indemnity plans, and wrapping some numbers around this. Each 1% shift of employees from a PPO to an HMO would save approximately $30,000. There are some other somewhat more technical items. The town is now one of a few communities that is not able to grandfather contribution rates, to set different contribution rates for new employees versus old employees, for new retirees versus people who have retired some time ago. This is due to a quirk in the GIC, Chapter 32, Section 19, which essentially allows municipalities that entered the GIC later to distinguish between groups of employees, but does not allow municipalities such as Brookline, which entered the GIC early, to draw that same distinction. And this would require a legislative change, and Brookline and a few other municipalities are in the same position. This is certainly a change that would seem to be sensible to at least allow us to bargain with our unions about grandfathering some employees, but not all. The next bullet, the second bullet, deals again with a somewhat technical issue. There's a GIC regulation that links health insurance and participation in the retirement system. That regulation precludes us from increasing the hours to participate in the retirement system without making employees ineligible for health insurance while they're active. And if that constraint were eliminated, it would provide more flexibility to the retirement board and would potentially allow us to reduce OPEB liability down the road. Finally, the last bullet is a recommendation that we prorate services for OPEBs, other post-employment benefits, for part-time employees. As things now stand, an employee, a retiree who has worked half-time for 10 years gets lifetime medical insurance beginning at the age of 55 for the employee and spouse. The recommendation is that you recognize the distinction between full-time and part-time employment, and that a half-time employee, for example, be required to work for 20 years at half-time employment rather than 10 years at half-time employment in order to get these lifetime benefits. This would be a decision that the retirement board could make.
Is the age 55 thing
Turning to the school side, the increase of the average K-8 class is now somewhere slightly under 21. The school policy articulated in 2009 was a class size of 22 to 24 for K through 3 and 25 through grades 4 and above. Increasing the class size, the K-8 class size average by 2 students from just under 21 to 22 and a half or 23 would result in a reduced classroom need, reduced need for salaries, and so forth, and would still remain within the school department's articulated policy. And the implication of this is that if you reduce the class size by if you increase the class size slightly and reduce the classroom need, say, by 2 classrooms at the kindergarten level in year 1, that would then carry over to the first grade the next year, and again in kindergarten in the second year, so that in the second year you would have a reduction of 4, in the third year a reduction of 6. And this is basically the sort of waterfall that B-Space did, as it started with an assumed number of 30 classrooms for kindergarten in each year, and just traced that class number down through the succeeding years. The idea here is that by slightly increasing the class size, you would be able to reduce the classroom need on an increasing basis going forward. Linked to this, really, I think, is increased flexibility in the enrollment and placement process. The current buffer zones and school, the non-buffer core zones, allow very substantial flexibility in the assignment of children without violating the buffer zones, and there's a recommendation that that flexibility be utilized going forward. There's or not a recommendation, a consideration, a discussion about utilizing the existing flexibility going forward in a number of ways. There's discussion about scaling back the high school tutorial program. This would result in direct cost savings, plus also capital savings from reduced classroom need. Treating elementary world languages as a special. What that means is that now a non-core course, for example, music or physical education, is treated as a special, which means that the music teacher or the phys ed teacher comes in and takes the class, and the regular teacher for that class does not have to remain with the class during that time. Treating elementary world languages now, the EWL teacher comes in and the classroom teacher remains in the class. Treating it as a special would release the regular teacher for that period and provide some additional flexibility. There is discussion about reviewing the EWL program for effectiveness, and obviously, depending on that, the question would be, should it be reduced? Is it something that is worthy of continuation or not? The next item that has been discussed is, and I mentioned this earlier, consolidation of the town and school early education programs. The town runs the program at Sewell at this time. The schools run the BEEP program, and the combining of those programs might allow some capital savings at various sites. The rates for the Brookline Education Program at this time are below the rates for comparable programs, and certainly below the rates for programs of comparable quality. And there has been a discussion, consideration of raising those rates to comparable levels. The next item, actually the next two items, next item is reduction or suspension of the materials fee program to achieve operating and capital savings. The materials fee program is the program that allows teachers, non-professional school employees, and also town staff to enroll their children in the Brookline schools for the payment of a materials fee, which is a relatively small amount. I do apologize. There may have been some documents that have gone out that use the word eliminate the materials fee program and eliminate METCO. And I don't think that either of those has really been discussed seriously, if at all, before the override study committee. I don't think that there's any serious proposal on the table to throw kids who are here now as materials fee students or as METCO students out of the schools. But the issue is that the current policy of the schools provides that non-resident students should be admitted on a space available basis. And at this point, materials fee and METCO students are admitted early before we know what the demands of resident students are going to be. So the admissions decisions are made, and then we still have to deal with the population of Brookline students who might enroll after those dates. That same issue applies to the METCO program. Again, the question of application of a policy of admission on a space available basis versus admission before the number of Brookline students, resident students, are going to be known. The final bullet is a recommendation that extended day be charged for its space, and that consider Recreation Department management of that. Now, we're actually turning to some fees on the school side. The extended day was one. There has been some discussion of fee-based full-day kindergarten. I think the thinking at this point is that this probably does not make sense to implement at this time, though there have been some arguments that you could implement it under certain circumstances, but this would be something that would be implemented after, most likely implemented, if at all, after full Chapter 70 funding is received from the state, because you would potentially impair the Chapter 70 funding you receive from the state if you charge for full-day kindergarten. It turns out that Newton actually provides full day a couple of days and not full day, and charges, and has not lost Chapter 70 funding. So, but I think that this is probably something that would be on the back burner. The Baldwin building is used for a teacher daycare program. They do not pay any rent for that. There is a recommendation that there be a charge for that use or consideration of that. There's consideration of the use of other school space, such as gyms, increasing the charges for that. Question of whether adult and community education should be within the schools or better within the recreation department. Discussion of the phase-in of the catch-up costs technology plan and the enhancements that formed the amounts in the general override at the beginning. Potential privatization of the school lunch program. This is something that the Efficiency Initiative Committee looked at back in 2008 to 2009. There was some bidding done on this, but it has not been looked at since that. Potential outsourcing of the school IT help desk. This item is here, revisit the use of the Old Lincoln School as a permanent K-8 facility. Again, let me say that the charge from the Selectmen to the Override Study Committee was to look at the capital costs of the various items that were recommended by B-Space, and this is just being done in the context of that, along with, and probably this should not be called out by itself, but The Override Study Committee, Capital Committee is looking at this, it's looking at the Driscoll School expansion, it's looking at, and will be looking at the high school when additional information is provided. So this is just one of a number of items. Almost there. Municipal savings and revenues, some potential items that have been looked at, outsourcing of park maintenance and grass cutting, some potential savings there. Reduction of minimum manning on fire trucks from 4 to 3. This was something that was called out in the 2008-2009 Efficiency Initiative Committee. The manning, 4-man manning or 4-person manning is part of our collective bargaining agreement, and any change here would require collective bargaining and agreement in that process. However, the elimination of one fire company, which would still keep the current stations open, but reduce a station from 2 companies to 4 companies, is another potential change that could be made. That would not require collective bargaining. Potential reduction of police details on town projects, potential reduction of library hours and or closure or reduction of hours at the Putterham Branch Library, elimination of the community health service and daycare inspections, and coordination. And let me just say that I recognize that a lot of these potential steps are not going to receive universal acclaim.
You think?
Coordination and consolidation of town information technology and school educational technology divisions. Finally, sort of a miscellaneous slide of some potential modifications of our financial practices or continuation of our financial practices, some non-residential taxes, legislative relief. There has been a good deal of discussion about using level payment borrowing where it's appropriate. The level payment borrowing is what you would know when you have a home mortgage and you pay the same amount every month for the term of the mortgage. The town now has declining payments over time so that it starts out at a higher level and falls at the end as principal is repaid during the term of the borrowing. Level payment borrowing would essentially shift costs, borrowing costs, at a somewhat higher interest, total interest payment from the early years to later years. And it would theoretically allow more borrowing early up front because you wouldn't have the higher early payments, and arguably would more appropriately spread the costs of payment. If you have a 20-year bond and if that building is being used for 20 years, it would spread the cost over the individuals the taxpayers who are here for that 20-year period and getting the benefit of that borrowing and the use of the building, rather than having those costs paid by people in the early years. There's a suggestion that there be some increased debt financing of capital projects, that this be considered, that we bond some capital projects rather than paying them out of our tax revenues. This does not suggest the reduction of the capital projects, but it suggests an increase in debt financing rather than pay-as-you-go financing. And the suggestion that the monies freed up by that be used to fund our OPEB liabilities. And there's also, this is a policy that the board has followed, that the Override Study Committee has essentially validated, that we use and continue to use one-time monies such as taxi medallion revenues to fund our OPEB liabilities, given the real bang for the buck that you can get by funding OPEB liabilities rather than paying them on a pay-as-you-go basis. The subcommittee, Revenue Subcommittee, has suggested a more aggressive pursuit of pilots. Those are payments in lieu of taxes by tax-exempt institutions. Has raised the question of whether we should actually have somebody dedicated to pursuing pilots on a full-time or a part-time basis. Obviously, any increase in pilots would require the agreement of a tax-exempt institution. These are voluntary payments. Pursuit of commercial development, including zoning changes, for example, on Route 9. Again, a long-term suggestion, a long-term thought that's under consideration, and requires a third party willing to do the development. And finally, there has been some discussion of potential legislative relief. And I know, and Susan, you could, and I see Alan Morse is here also, these are some, at least some of these, and you could probably add to these items that have been discussed with our legislators in the regular meetings at the school department, or the annual meetings, and I think also meetings between annual meetings that the school department and school committee has with our legislators. Our special education program now pays for medical needs of students, such as students who have tracheotomies, need ventilators, have feeding tubes, and so forth. And one can ask the question of, shouldn't those really be items that are covered by medical insurance and more generally spread, rather than items that are paid by the school district, Brookline or other, where those students with medical needs are located. METCO funding levels are another issue. METCO provides about $3,500 a year per student, as opposed to the funding levels for charter schools, which are Boston students going to charter schools take with them, I think, about $15,000 now, whereas a METCO student brings about $3,500. So again, though, that is that would require some legislative change and some legislative funding. That will give you some idea of where we are, what we've been thinking about, the directions of items that will be pursued. And I don't know, Susan, any other comments?
Please feel free to join your co-chair.
Thank you. I'm in my Sunday best. I was out shoveling snow, which you all will be doing soon, so I won't belabor
Which
this.
we're trying to leave as early as possible,
Yeah.
just to do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, I think there are a couple places where, I sort of second everything that Dick said. I think there are a couple places where the committee feels like it's pretty far along and is ready to wrap up, and there are other places where there need to be more of a coming together of analyses and sort of meeting of the minds on the facts and figures. I don't think anybody needs the Override Study Committee to come to 100% consensus on what to do about those facts, but I think we're all in agreement that the role of the committee is to get the facts straight, and if there are disagreements about the facts, to at least just state those as clearly and transparently as possible. I think the only thing I'll note is that some of the things that were considered savings, I think it's good for a PowerPoint slide. I think the conversation has been a little more complicated about which of these are efficiencies and which of these are service cuts. because there's a list, both are included here. Efficiencies, people seem to be defining as something that provides essentially the same level of, or quality of service for a lower price. A service cut meaning you are paying a lower price, but you are getting less stuff, whatever stuff is, less service from the town, less education for the children, whatever it is, but it's a service cut. And I think that that's the only place where I would say that the committee is wrestling with which is which, because making that as transparent as possible to the voters is something that we're all thinking about.
Maybe while you're both there, I can ask a question that it seems to me will be very important as you move the process forward. First of all, I think in fairness, we're recognizing that whatever report we get on March 1st will not be the final. But more to the point, I'm concerned that many of these recommendations have very different timetable timeframes. And so it seems to me that a big task for the committee will be to group things in such a way that it's clear what can be done within what different sets of timeframes, and also what the value of that action may be relative to, let's say, you've got very gross projections for what an override might be, but we need to have more detail to fill in those timetable blanks.
Right, and I completely agree. I think Susan is nodding, she completely agrees. The subcommittees have actually proposed ranges for a lot of these. There are numbers that I think we're going to hone in on over time. There are changes, frankly, there are changes that could be implemented now before any report comes from the Override Study Committee. There are practices that could be changed. There are decisions that could be made. You've seen what is essentially a laundry list, and there are items on there that I think people on the town side and the school side should be considering now, even before there's the March 1st report, which is only an interim report of the Override Study Committee. And conversely, there are changes, for example, a potential reduction in minimum manning from 4 to 3 that would require collective bargaining and agreement, and I would put probably on the other end of that spectrum.
Right.
So there's a spectrum of ease of implementation and a spectrum of cost savings.
Right.
Certainly.
Right. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I want to say, first of all, thanks to both of you and all your committee members, because it's clear that a lot of hard work has gone into this. And I have a couple of points. I'm sure you're going to have a big line of people speaking tomorrow night, so I'm going to give you my quick things tonight. And I will say, just speaking as a taxpayer, I think if that override number gets below 10%, it would be better for the average taxpayer to contemplate than if it's over 10%. Just kind of what people feel is.
Yeah, somebody called that the gulp factor, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
All right.
But I will say, just a couple quick ones. The trash fee, if you raise that trash fee, it's not deductible, whereas if it's in your taxes, it is deductible. I do think we should be considering going to Newton's system, where you have the one bin, like we have our recycling bin, and you pay for additional bags for your trash after that. So I don't know how much savings that would give us, but, I think that would serve green purposes as well as perhaps some revenue implications.
Do you care to opine on whether that should be a 32-gallon bin or a 54-gallon bin?
What are our current recycling ones?
Come on,
Okay, no, I won't
move
get
on,
into that.
please.
Quickly, that's coming for
Right,
the
and the
fiscal year end.
DPW will give us a proposal, I think, that
Yeah.
will address that.
They're working on it.
Yeah. I don't have any problem with increasing the parking fines, but I have been getting numerous complaints from all of my neighbors lately that apparently the enforcement efforts on parking have recently been ratcheted up dramatically. So people are kind of upset about that already. So if the fees are even higher, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what exactly is going on there, but there seems to have been a change in that. So I assume our revenue is higher as a result of all of my neighbors calling me to complain.
That's not a recommendation that we made.
Yeah. As far as the METCO program goes, I'm a great fan of the METCO program. I think it provides a tremendously needed diversity in our schools, not just of racial and ethnic diversity, which we do need, but also of socioeconomic diversity. However, I would agree with you that we should vigorously pursue getting reimbursed at a better rate for that, but I would not like to see I can even see waiting a little longer in the process to say, okay, here's where we have some slots, for METCO, but I would hate to see that program be suspended as seemed to be one of the options.
Yeah, and just one clarification on METCO. There have been discussions, as Dick said, about reducing it, and there have been no discussions that I know of about taking current children out of the Brookline schools. But there have been discussions, and I'm not sure where the word suspension comes in, about ramping it down to the point where there are 0 METCO children coming in over some number of years. So eliminate, I think, is a complicated word, because eliminate makes it sound like we would take current METCO children out of the buildings,
Yeah.
which no one is proposing. But eliminate insofar as ramp down to 0 has been a real conversation and is getting financially modeled.
Okay, well, I'm opposed to ramping it down to 0. Okay. I don't know what the high school tutorial program is, but I have just seen over the years in the schools that sometimes if people aren't getting remedial help, they end up going to an IEP situation, which ends up being more expensive, I think, for us. So I think that, anything you do in that area, you have to really carefully balance, so you're not pushing people to say, oh, okay, my kid's not getting what they need, we're going for an IEP. On the world languages, I think we should definitely be reviewing it for effectiveness. I will say people just went out and campaigned hard and passed an override for world languages a couple years ago, and you're going to annoy all those people if you are trying to totally cut that out, I would suspect, but I don't know. I do know I have on the teachers' kids being allowed to go to school here. I have heard over the years from a number of teachers how incredibly important that is to them. That's one of the reasons they come here to teach. So I, again, would be careful about that. Extended day. Extended day is critical for so many parents. And I would just hate to see us pushing people to say, oh, send your kids home to the empty house because you can't afford a much more, much higher fee for extended day, which is, really, a lot of people depend on that, I also wondered about the outsourcing the school IT help desk. Just having called, IT help desk for various companies where you're talking to somebody in India or wherever they may be, usually the amount of help you get is not great. And in my family, my husband, who actually works for IBM, is the one who makes those calls, because I don't even know the right questions to ask. And he even gets incredibly frustrated at trying to get help from these help desks that are kind of off in the ozone someplace. So, I do think coordinating town and school and in any way we can do that, would certainly be a good idea. But I just wonder how totally outsourcing the thing would.
I don't think the idea was that there wouldn't be people on site. It's just that these would be private contractors, or could be, rather than town or school employees.
Okay. Well, and I will, the elimination of a fire company. I can tell you that there is one thing that is critically important to the senior citizens in this town, and that is the response time. And And, you know, I have great concerns about asking senior citizens to vote for an override that's largely going to benefit people with school-age children, the schools, and saying, oh, and by the way, the thing you care the most about is maybe going to be impacted negatively. I think that's a political mistake, and as I'm the Board of Selectmen's representative on the Council on Aging, so I feel I have to pass that along to you, because I know that is critically important to them. And then I will just say on the daycare inspections that I know, I have heard that we do a much more thorough job by having this in-house, and that the state, I think, has literally is not doing nearly as many inspections as they used to. I had heard there had been some fall off on the state level, so that, you know, that it was a good thing that we were doing them, because the state was not doing a great job. I don't know if that's true, or that might have been propaganda.
Selectman Daley, I hate to rush
Okay,
you, but we do have a
that's it.
snowstorm, and we are trying to
Yeah.
get through our meeting and get everybody home safely. Yes, Selectman Goldstein?
Thanks. I'll be really quick. First, I'll
Don't
echo-
repeat anything
I
Selectman
won't,
Daley
I
said.
won't.
Thank you.
I'll first echo my thank you. That list provides a very large target, and for everybody listening, don't shoot the messengers of this. You know, as Selectman Daley has pointed out, you know, there's a lot of sacred cows on this list, a lot of cows that'll be sacred to a lot of people. Sacrifices are going to have to be made if we're going to get below 10%, as you've suggested too, and I echo that sentiment. One thing that I'd like to suggest that you look at, and this picks up on the one-time money thing, is, and it also picks up on the Route 9 rezoning. And it also picks up on the old Lincoln School. I don't think, as a result of the B-Space Committee's deliberations, I don't think the old Lincoln School is a good idea. What I do think is a good idea is eventually selling the site of the old Lincoln School and collecting that one-time money from it and using it as an opportunity to spur some redevelopment on Lower Route 9 and Lower Boylston Street. And I think that, you know, that requires an effort by the school, since it's school property. I think it's a discussion which time has come. I know we need it for swing space in the short term, but at the end of this process, that's going to be surplus property. It can't remain in that you know, limbo condition forever. And I think the best thing that should be looked into anyway at this stage is eventually selling that property and using that capital to offset some of the revenue that's required here. That's all I'll say for now. There's lots to say.
And I don't want to belabor all of this, but the Old Lincoln School actually has been useful over the years in on a number of occasions for what you referred to as swing space, for school renovations, and there are school renovations that are coming down the pike, even without the expansion. At some point, it was used when Town Hall was being renovated. You know, so it can be a valuable space, and obviously this is something that the Override Study Committee, the Capital Subcommittee of the Schools, the Advisory Committee, the Building Commission, this board will have to look at. And a fair point, but I'm not sure, Ken, that there's a cutoff date where we can say, you know, after this date, the Old Lincoln School will not be needed for swing space for any purposes.
I think it might be after we look at it.
Yeah.
A luxury
Fair
that
point.
a luxury that we can afford to do without, and will have an added benefit of sparking some redevelopment, and badly needed redevelopment, which you outline as in your bullet points as a place where the tax base could be improved.
Reality check.
Yeah.
Long-term, interesting notion. Short-term, between now and any time we have to pass an override, non-starter. Move on.
That's true.
Can I say-
Selectman
can I say-
Waschinsky?
Can I say one thing on that, or do you want to move
Yeah.
on?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
They're only select.
Brief.
Brief. So certainly in the next few years, it's all booked up. The longer-term question is an interesting one. I think that everyone that I would have been speaking to is interested in a cost-benefit analysis. I will say, though, that to the extent that there aren't other properties available for a high school, the old Lincoln has been discussed as a long-term piece of the high school solution. So some sort of BHS, Old Lincoln, Baldwin type set of campuses after Lars Anderson came off the table as a potential site, because there were a lot of people that were not interested in exploring that. Somewhere, somehow, you need enough space for high school. So Old Lincoln, as it's been discussed, now, it doesn't mean that's the final answer, but all I'm saying is
I mean,
that
that-
cost benefit just has to get run
That was
somehow.
also did not appear to be the preferred solution for the high school expansion either, so.
Selectman Waschinsky.
To echo the thanks, having been on a couple of these kinds of committees in the past myself, I know what you guys are going through, gargantuan task. I'll take a little different approach and just suggest that as you switch from fact-finding mode to starting to get into analysis and making recommendations, that you look at this as kind of a package and put together a package that kind of makes sense within what I'll call the values of the community. And, looking at, every dollar a community spends has a constituency. And, looking down that list, there were some themes. And one theme that hit me is the cost of raising children generally, and in Brookline is very expensive. But a lot of those items were adding costs for after-school kinds of things and preschool kinds of things. So I would hope that we kind of look at this as a package. And there are some things we may want to raise, spread the costs amongst the entire tax base, and there are some things we want to impose user fees, but I think we have to very carefully consider which should be user fees and which should be spread across the tax base. And just because we can raise a fee doesn't mean we should.
Well, the programs, operations where those fees, obviously there's a distinction between programs that are mandatory and programs that are non-mandatory, and that's where the line was drawn.
No, I understand, and I understand why everything is up there, but the community is going to weigh in, and I suspect that's where you're going to be getting a lot of pushback.
I certainly appreciate the work, and actually, Neil and I served on the Override Study Committee in 2007, and I can tell you that this committee has, in a very short space of time, accomplished an amazing amount of research. So I think we are all grateful and impressed. I do, however, want to reiterate the challenge that the goal is to quantify in a timeline that will impact on an actual override vote, and that vote will not take place in 2020 or 2018 or 2016 or 2017. I think it will take place, as it has to probably for the devotion school, no later than 2015. So what we need are those items that can actually make a significant difference within the time frame for a plan for an override. And things that will not have any impact for 10 or 15 years, you better make a very clear distinction about what the dollar impact would be in the short term and in the long term, because I think that will be very important for our override discussion. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I really, again, want to echo the thanks to the members of this committee. They have just been incredibly diligent and professional in their approach to this process. It is a remarkable committee to the last person. So,
I will say, I will also like to thank the professional staff who has done a tremendous amount of work. Melissa and Sean in staffing the committee have made all sorts of logistics and scheduling and other kinds of miracles happen. I know the superintendent and Peter have responded to hundreds of data requests. They've been to literally over 15 meetings and of all of these 75. And so we're very grateful to our very talented staff also.
Yes, hear, hear.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to the committee. And now we will move back to our next calendar item, which is,
Can I just say that the town snow emergency has gone into effect, so
as of 8 p.m.
you're not
Right.
supposed to be parked in the street, so,
I would say that anybody who is attending this meeting tonight, we've made special arrangements, and there will be no towing in this area.
Right. Okay, Kingpin, the Brookline Spa, Mr. Batiti?
petite.
Batiste, sorry. Please come up to the microphone. So we noticed that the doors were closed and it was covered over with paper.
Sure.
And seems to have been transformed, so tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, basically, I'm renovating it right now. My brother's out of the business, and actually, I know the owner of the building well, and we struck a deal, and I'm going to be I'm renovating it right now, looking to open hopefully the middle of February. So, and that entails updating like the Ansel system that's in there, the fixtures, floors, walls where needed. I had to add a bathroom, obviously, for the small seating that I do have. So I was willing to do that and just clean it up, basically. Keep the spa the way, you know, it was or has been for years.
Menu changes? Any big menu changes?
Well, we're going to open up at 6 in the morning again, and we'll do like local coffee, breakfast sandwiches, baked goods. I have a few places called The Real Deal, and there's one in West Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, and Brighton right now. And I have a bakery also, so a lot of that stuff will be incorporated into the spa. We'll have fresh baked breads every day, fresh baked goods coming from the bakery in the morning. We're going to put the lottery back in there, obviously, you know, cater to hopefully the town workers in the morning, where basically we'll have everything the same, food, lottery, cigarettes we're going to have as well. The only thing we're not going to have is the beer and wine. Basically putting in, with the liability and everything, I don't think we need it. There's a liquor store right up the street. I just didn't want the liability, or we didn't have the space for it either. We did have to add, like I said, a handicap bathroom. So basically, everything's going to stay the same, more updated menu, like I said. But we'll have, you know, grab-and-go stuff, candy, stuff like that as well. So now our hours of operations will be probably like 6 to 8 during the week, and maybe 8 to 8 or 8 to 9 on the weekends. I used to be involved in the Brookline Spa years ago, and I kind of left it to my brother, but basically he's out of the business now. He's on to bigger and better things, and basically it fell in my lap again. But obviously I'm looking forward to coming back to Brookline. There's a lot of good memories here for my family and my late dad and everything, so I'm really excited to come back to Brookline and run it, you know, the best I can.
Well, certainly people paid attention when the door was closed. I can tell you that. I believe you have satisfied all of the inspectional services. They've signed off on your facility, and the building department has approved the modifications that you've made. I guess you have to have a final inspection just to be sure
Correct.
everything is hunky-dory.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yeah, I have a very
Yeah.
personal question. Are you going to keep the wraps? on
Yes,
this?
yes.
All right,
It's all coming back, don't
All
worry.
right.
all right,
Bigger and better.
good. We
Okay.
missed them.
Yeah,
I
right.
like the Caesar salad.
Everybody misses something, We're just not all the same things, right?
Right, right.
Sort
So-
of like the override study committee.
Yeah, right, right. All right, if there are no other questions, then I will move that we approve the application of Kingpin LLC, doing business as Brookline Spa, Eric Petit, owner, for a
Is this
common,
Public hearing?
no,
Okay.
it's common vic. Common victular license at 75 Harvard Street. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky? Aye. Chair votes aye. Good
Thank you.
luck.
Okay,
See you in-
thanks
See you
very
in
much.
February.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, guys.
Next is a common vic for Iceberry. Would you come forward to the microphone, please? And just identify yourself for the public record.
Hi, my name is Long Dang. I'm also a firefighter here to open a business.
And this is going to be, your menu will be
Just frozen yogurt and
just frozen yogurt
candy toppings.
and toppings, right?
Yep.
Okay. Basically, it's not a change in service.
No,
No.
nothing's changed.
Okay, all right. Are there questions? This application has also been approved by all of the enforcement agencies.
No questions.
Any questions? Then I move that we approve the application of Iceberry, Long Dang owner, for a common victular license at 1376A Beacon Street. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Good
Thank you.
luck.
And best wishes for warm weather.
Yes, right.
I
Demand may be low right now. All right. Getting into now more complex questions. We have pledge of license for a combination of Matt Murphy's and Pomodoro. And I think an ambitious, in fact, pledge of license. So identify yourself, please, for the record, and then give us a summary of the proposal.
Sure. My name's Robert McGovern. I'm an attorney with McDermott, Quilty & Miller. We represent Brookline Bank and Siobhan Caro in the Pledge of License application. They're seeking a pledge for both locations they have in Brookline for Golden Apple Incorporated, Pomodoro, and also Matt Murphy's Incorporated, Matt Murphy's Pub. The Pledge of License is to secure a commercial real estate loan of which to get real estate property for the purchase of the property and renovation located at 204 Hanover Street in Boston. And the details of that are included in the application, and we hope you'll support it.
And this is basically, if I can put it in a vernacular, hawking the two Brookline establishments in order to purchase the real estate for the Boston Pomodoro.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Questions about this?
I mean, I'll just say our chief concern here is the good standing of the potential
Yes.
lien holder in case they became the license holder. I have no problem with Brookline Bank.
You think Brookline Bank will be a good custodian should that, we would not wish that event to occur?
No.
Okay, are there questions about this transaction? Pledge of license, we'll have to take two votes, one for each Brookline establishment. Seeing none? No? I will move. First, that we approve the application of Matt Murphy's Pub, doing business as Matt Murphy's Pub, Siobhan Carew, president, holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common victualler at 14 Harvard Street, for a pledge of said license to Brookline Bank. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And the second is, I move that we approve the application of Golden Apple, doing business as Pomodoro. Siobhan Carew, president and holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverages license as a common victualler at 24 Harvard Street, for a pledge of said license to Brookline Bank. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Great.
May this be a successful enterprise.
Thank you very
Do
much,
not put Matt Murphy's or Pomodoro in Brookline at risk for this project.
Oh, absolutely not.
We will be very unhappy.
That's what I. Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Next item is a change of manager for the wine gallery. Mr. Ostrovsky? Mr. Rader with you?
Good evening.
Okay. Mr. Rader, you have a kind of spotty record here.
Sure.
Are you totally reformed?
I believe so, yes.
I hope so, because if we entrust you with management of this operation, the owner will hold you accountable, as will we.
I completely understand
Okay.
and agree.
So this is the proposal for a change of manager. I believe there was an issue earlier about the designated manager not being on the premises. I presume this is an improvement. Are there questions with regard to this request from members of the board? If you look on 16-13, you will see the comments that I was referring to. And finally, I guess I specifically want to observe that there was an orientation meeting for new license holders, and Mr. Rader did not attend that meeting?
I was not aware of that meeting. I apologize. I sent an email to Derek Hayes, in fact, to that
Okay,
extent.
and I gather you've had a follow-up conversation with Lieutenant Hayes?
We've been playing phone tag for almost a week and a half now.
Uh-huh. I would urge you to stop playing tag.
I've been
Okay.
trying to get in touch with him. I have been emailing him.
I know he works different hours, so I can appreciate it might be a difficulty. All right, we ready to move this one? I move that we approve the application of Chestnut Hill Group doing business as Wine Gallery, Alex Ostrovsky, manager and holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license, as a package goods store, 400B Washington Street, for a change in manager as follows, from Alex Ostrovsky to John Rader. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Binka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and now we have the Boston Hospitality Holiday Inn. My goodness. I would like to acknowledge at the outset that we received a letter from Mr. Villamere? Villamere. Oh, gosh, that's too bad. And colleagues with regard to the prior lack of compliance. And we appreciate the fact that you have attended to the matter. Therefore, would you like to carry on?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Adam Barnowski with the Law Office of Robert Allen here at 300 Washington Street in Brookline Village. With me is Bob Anderson, who's the Senior Vice President of Lincris Glenn Villamere, who is the General Manager and the proposed manager, and Jordan Kellerman, who is the Assistant Manager at the Holiday Inn and is the proposed alternate manager. Again, we're here, as you'll recall, to bring really the local and state records up with the current operations. As we told you back in November, Mr. Villamere's been the general manager there for some time and essentially acting as the manager of record, and we'd like to formalize that by bringing this application before the board. Again, as a way of background, he does have extensive experience in the hospitality industry. He's worked in food and beverage and as a general manager of hotels for over 30 years. Both Jordan Kellerman and Mr. Villamere have taken the on-site tips training, so they are well-versed in the updated regulations and are fully compliant therewith. And it's my understanding they've been in touch regularly with Lieutenant Hayes. And
Lieutenant Hayes says so.
and I'll certainly stop there and pass it over to Glenn if the board has any particular questions.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the board? I have to say, we were very disappointed at the status of things when we heard from you the last time. I'm impressed to see that actions have been taken, and you did satisfy our inspectors, so I hope that we don't see you again. That would be our earnest request.
I think that feeling is probably mutual.
Right. Valued, I would say, you know, we treasure having a good hotel where people can stay and have a beverage and a meal. So we'd like this to be a good record going forward. All right. In this case, again, it's not a public hearing, so I believe I can move that we approve the application of Boston Hospitality SPVEF LLC, doing business as Holiday Inn, holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license as an inn holder at 1200 Beacon Street, for a change in manager and the addition of an alternate manager as follows. Change from Robert James Anderson to Glenn Villamere, and an additional alternate manager, Jordan H. Kellerman. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Go forward.
Thank you very much.
And good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is a transfer and pledge of license from Sunset Cantina. Are there people here representing Sunset Cantina?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Howard Wayne, and I'm an attorney representing Sunset Cantina here tonight. I'm a resident of Brookline. I live up on Tappan Street, and I only bring that to your attention that because of the snowstorm tonight, I was awarded the short straw because it was on my way.
Sorry about that.
But seriously speaking, with me are Mr. Arabalakian. He's the president and the new majority stockholder of Sunset Cantina Era, and Mark Berkowitz, who will be the manager, and also Mr. Mark Kadish, the former owner, soon to be the former owner, and he's taking back a promissory note to help finance both this and the Sunset in Austin. The Cantina presently will stay exactly the way it is, the same number of seats, basically the same number of menu, at least at the present time. There will be a note, and the note is in the total amount of $4,325,000 from the Middlesex Savings Bank, and therefore the Middlesex Savings Bank would like a pledge of the license to secure the loan. Now, we're not paying that total amount for just the Sunset Cantina, but that also includes the Sunset Grill also. So I think we listed maybe $1,250,000, I believe, as the purchase price that was allocated to the grill. And we ask you to approve the transfer to these gentlemen, and any questions you might have of them. They're all here tonight, and Mr. Berkowitz is anxious to manage and take over the operation. I think you probably know Mr. Berkowitz. He's of the Berkowitz Legal Seafoods family, so he certainly has a lot of experience.
Never heard of him.
In the restaurant business. He is TIPS trained and attended, Mark, you attended the course recently?
Yes, and met with Lieutenant Hayes as well.
So I have a couple of technical things just want to raise with you. The application cites outdoor seating of 24. In fact, it's only approved for 17. You should just simply be aware of that when the weather finally warms up and the snow goes away. In addition,
We should make that change when we take the
Yeah,
vote.
I would make that change in the
Well,
application.
we'll do it, but you need to be simply aware that you have a limit of 17 seats outside. As it turns out, you're approved for more indoor seats than you've actually requested, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. There were some issues raised with regard to the time commitment. Mr. Berkowitz may be very experienced in management, but I don't see he can be on two sites at the same time. And we do have a requirement that the manager be on the premises 40 hours. So how do you propose to do this, sir?
That's actually, the 80 hours is part-time for me.
Okay.
It's, no, seriously,
You're not aware of the family, but I happen to know all the brothers.
Believe me, 80 hours is
It's
minimum.
part-time.
Okay. We just had someone here who had not been in compliance. I'm here to tell you there will be oversight, and lack of compliance will be noted. And our recommendation to everyone who has a common victualler license and an alcoholic beverage license is to have assistant managers. Therefore, you get to sleep sometimes?
Yes,
No, we
Okay.
do, and
All right.
Amanda, I think, has been the assistant manager for the last 4 years, and we talked to Lieutenant Hayes today, and he said that he doesn't have any problems
Okay, all
switching
right.
her over to assist Mr. Berkowitz.
Okay.
But, go ahead,
Questions?
Nancy.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question because as I remember this, when you the original owners came before us, we had some question. First of all, as you know, that this is, this is really for the proposed manager. This area is a lot of students. We take our liquor laws very seriously. We do stings and things like that. And there was some question, as I remember, I can't remember the details, but about people, I think it was, there was a proposal initially for people to come up to the, sort of to order from get essentially a takeout sort of thing, including their alcohol, and then take it out to the outside seating area. And we had objected to that at the time, and so I don't believe they went forward with that. But I just want to make sure that there's going to be supervision about.
Table service.
Okay.
Table
service.
I don't never recall ever doing that. We always have wait service on there.
Okay.
You have to, in order to get a table in the patio, you have to go see a hostess, then we bring out menus, we seat you. So it would never be a situation where somebody would be taking anything out anyway. But I'm not sure if
Okay.
you're confusing us with someone, or there was some confusion on the past.
Well, I think that there was maybe a proposal to do it one way, and I don't know if it was ever a serious proposal,
It's been in
but,
operation for a good number of years, hadn't had any violations.
I plan on continuing on being a manager there and helping to grow things and improve the food quality and all that kind of stuff. So me and Mark are going to be kind of working together there. So I don't think you'll see much of a change in the management.
Okay.
So things should be going pretty smoothly, and we're hoping to build upon the good reputation that we've had there and keep it all going in the right direction.
Okay.
I will be still working there as well, so I don't think you'll have anything to worry about in terms of Mark and me being there. So we're actually bringing in more management into the mix, so I think that's a safer and better situation that'll end up the end result.
okay.
Just.
Selectman Baker.
Yeah, to follow up on the idea of, you use the term assistant manager. We actually have a process
Right.
to appoint formally alternate managers.
Right.
And
She is
She's
the
currently on there as an alternate manager.
so she will remain.
She will remain.
And we had
her fill out another form
Oh, all right, so because her name isn't listed in your application, and I didn't realize that she was being
She
moved.
is currently an alternate management there right now. The other manager, Brooke Harrison's out of maternity leave. She's
Here it
been there
is.
for 13 years.
Okay.
She opened the store with me.
Okay.
She'll be probably coming back as well.
Hmm.
Amanda was always an alternate manager.
That's
So
interesting,
Liz-
interesting point.
We're changing the license. I hate to say this, but we may need to have your alternate managers submitted for approval again.
She has filled out the form to do
Okay, all
We
right.
have the forms, but
It's just
Lieutenant
ne-
Hayes said she didn't need to do any of that fingerprinting or anything.
Since it had been done.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we should get it on the agenda. They don't have to come back.
That's right. No, you wouldn't have to be here. We just want to be sure it's voted as part of the license. That's the important
You
thing.
do not need
all
an
right?
attorney, you don't even have
Yes,
to be
right,
here for this.
right. It just needs to get on the calendar.
Hey,
Good.
All right.
Yeah, if she filled out the form, though, just
Right,
talk to
well,
Brenda Costello. And
Yeah, my guess is
I
that.
think we shrimp at the melon function there, that time, maybe that's why.
Sounds like it's in process. Okay, if that's the case, then do we have any other questions?
No.
No? All
Can
right.
I actually do have a question, and that's a question about the numbers
Yeah, I know.
of seats. And I'm trying to find, I see on 18-5, 153 inside, 24 outside, and I'm wondering where
The building inspector is the one who
is there,
says.
but is there a document that
You know what, we
Well-
did receive a document in the last 2 days, I just noticed it on our license that just came, it's a yellow document, I think it's the equivalent of like a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
Yeah,
As
that
of
was C of O would say
2 days ago,
that.
it read 199 inside and 17 outside.
That's correct. That's what the building department, building inspectors have approved for the property. So the discrepancy really is that there was a request
I think the difference
in the
is-
application for 24, and it could just be a misunderstanding.
If you recall, maybe a year and a half or 2 weeks, we had a little expansion down there. It used to be 153. With that little expansion that we did at
Yeah.
that point, that's probably the discrepancy in the number where we expanded, blew out a little bit of a wall, expanded a couple of years ago. It used to be 153, now it's 199.
So
Right.
should we,
Well-
are we clarifying that we're authorizing 199?
199 inside, 17 outside.
The authorization should be the number of seats in the certificate of occupancy issued by the building department, which is the 199 and 17.
Good.
Okay? But I don't think
Makes
we
sense.
have to put that in our vote. I mean, there's not a place.
Well, I mean, I think.
Do you want to incorporate it?
we
If
could-
so,
I think we
figure out
should,
where to
yeah,
put
I
it.
think we should
Or
include
just-
that in our vote.
Just incorporate by reference.
Yeah, the
The
building
building
department's
department's certificate of
C of O.
occupancy. Right, okay. Other questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? And if so, please come forward.
Yes, hi.
Just identify yourself for the public record, please.
I'm Tom Sprague. I represent National Boston. We are the abutter behind at 115 Dummer Street. I'd like to speak in favor. We found the Sunset to be a very valuable asset to this particular part of the community. There really isn't another restaurant along that strip of the same caliber. There are plenty of eateries, but really nothing where you can sit down and have an alcoholic beverage and a reasonable meal, and it has a nice atmosphere that's pretty unique amongst all the others on Commonwealth Avenue. So we've used the place extensively to entertain both vendors and clients and staff, and we'll be there Friday.
Okay. Sounds like a personal endorsement. Any other comments? Seeing none, I think we're ready to take a vote. Where would you like to put the...
I would recommend adding at the end of, it's really, the important license is really the all kinds license. So I would recommend adding at the end of subparagraph A,
Okay.
in accordance with the certificate of occupancy issued by the building department, if that makes sense.
Kate, you got that? Okay.
Fine with us.
All right.
Ken? Nancy, everybody?
That sounds good.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I move that we approve the application of Sunset Partners, doing business as Sunset Cantina, Ari Balikian, President, for a common victular license at 916 Commonwealth Avenue. All in favor, please say, do we have to do each one of these? Can we just,
I would suggest you do at least A.
A and B? Oh, I mean, yeah, 1 and A, all right. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. I move that we approve the application of Sunset Cantina Management Incorporated, doing business as Sunset Cantina, Mark Kadish, President, and holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common victualler at 916 Commonwealth Avenue for a transfer of said license to Sunset Partners Incorporated, doing business as Sunset Cantina. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley? Whoops.
In accordance
With
with
the
the
certificate of occupancy.
issued
Sorry.
by the building
Thank you.
department.
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein.
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky. Chair votes aye. Okay. And if everyone will agree, I'm going to do B, C, and D as one vote. I move that we approve the application of Sunset Partners, doing business as Sunset Cantina, to appoint Mark Berkowitz manager. No, wait a minute. He's not manager yet, so I think I need to point him. We're going to do C first. We're going to move that we approve the application of Sunset Partners Incorporated doing business as Sunset Cantina, appointing Mark Berkowitz as manager. That's part one. Then I move that we approve the application of Sunset Cantina with Mark Berkowitz to be manager, holder of an all kinds alcoholic beverage license for an entertainment license. And then finally, I move that we approve the application of Sunset Partners, Mark Berkowitz to be manager, holder of an all kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common victualler for a pledge of said license to the Middlesex Bank.
All as provided in the agenda. Right?
As provided in the agenda. All in favor of voting these in order C, B, D, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay.
Good luck, good luck.
Okay, next is,
Lemu Inc.
Limo.
Limo, it says.
Come and tell us how to pronounce it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Adam Barnowski, I believe it is Limu Inc.? Limu.
Okay.
Phonetically L-E-E, Mu. Here with me are Reza Rahmani, Joe Dang, and Raymond Lee. And Mr. Dang is our proposed manager of record, and we will likely be again before the board in the next month or two to put the other two business partners on as alternate managers here. As just a bit of background, they're going to be opening up Limu Tea House at 1032 Commonwealth Avenue. And this is the former location of Kapow, which I think closed down about 3 to 6 months ago.
Right.
I'll allow them an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what their proposal is, but it's broadly going to be a mix of some Middle Eastern, some modern Middle Eastern and Asian flavors. All three owners have extensive experience in the restaurant industry. Mr. Rahmani has 2 other Section 12 licenses, both in Amherst. One is a nightclub, another is a more traditional restaurant, but they've been operating for a series of years here, and he's had no violations so far. He understands what it takes to run a successful and responsible business operation, and they think that they're going to have some success here with Limu Tea. Obviously, they can explain a little bit more of their concept.
Tea and other beverages, I gather.
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a description of the sort of overall menu that you're planning to provide?
Yes, hi, my name is Reza Rahmani. The food menu itself is inspired by the street flavors from the Middle East, mostly Israeli and Lebanese style cuisine. Part of a menu that I put together, I'm also a chef. And the front of the house predominantly is going to be run by Joe and Ray, my partners here. It's the concept of the tea is bubble tea, which is cold.
That's actually part of what I was curious about.
Okay, well, I'll let Joe explain.
Explain that, okay?
I'll let Joe explain that part of the tea.
All right.
So part of our menu, especially for the drinks, is going to be a concept called bubble tea. Bubble tea actually exists in Brookline currently. There's a few tea houses also in Austin. It's basically flavored tea. It's a new way to try the tea beverage. And so whereas most people find tea to be, those will find them to maybe a little bit bland. We put fruit flavors into it, and then we also make it a little bit fun by putting textures in it, such as little toppings. So these toppings can come in form of chewy tapioca pearls, or jellies, or even fruits. And so it makes a kind of a fun and unique drink. And with that, it comes with the whole playful personality of it all. And hopefully we'll be able to hit our target market with this product.
Okay. Questions for the, yes, Selectman Daley.
Well, I want to say, as you probably heard me saying to the last guys, because you're kind of down in the same area, there's a lot of students there, we're going to expect you to be very diligent about asking people for identification. Even if they, you say, well, they look like they're 22 instead of 21. You've got to ask people for identification. We do stings, and we take it very seriously if you end up with a violation. So that's something we would ask you to be super conscientious about.
Well, if I may, very quickly, I currently run a nightclub in Amherst, which, as you know, is a college community town. We've had no violations, and one of the things that we actually initiated in the town of Amherst was using scanners to identify, because we know that there's a lot of technology right now that produces even fake IDs for college students. And we proposed that to the town. We were the first place to use it, and other places now, every other alcoholic, every bar and other nightclub in town now uses this same technology. We take it very seriously. We know that we've identified where they use fake IDs, what states are easier to duplicate, and we've identified those things. And like I said, we would be very proactive in doing what it takes. Currently, for this upcoming semester for us over there, we've also we've gone to the town, and I personally have a meeting with the chief of police and the fire chief before every semester begins to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and what they expect from us. And like I said, we proactively do that. We've proposed even a designated driver initiative where somebody that comes in identifies themselves as that we give them all the free soft drinks and food that they want. That way, we want to, like I said, promote the safety of the students, and we would like to continue that here.
Very good.
Well, that's important, and I will say that we, as a board, communicate regularly with the President's office at Boston University when incidents occur. So it's very helpful to us to know that your experience comes from Amherst.
No, absolutely. We all are very, very much involved even with the community. Myself, I've served on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce for the last 4 years in Amherst, and we have open communications with the university, especially with the University of Massachusetts. I have a next meeting this Friday, actually. So we try to be proactive with everything.
Good. That's good to know. All right. Yeah.
You said that something about reaching your target audience. I'm asking who your target audience is, and I'll tell you why to speed things up. I'm asking that. I always thought bubble tea was something sort of aimed at kids, and I'm wondering how that intersects with alcoholic beverages.
Sure. I'll let Joe answer part of that, because they run the bubble tea house, and just from my perspective, what I've seen, and one of the reasons why I partnered up with Joe and Raymond on this, is that we've seen, I think you might be correct, but I think it's become part of a culture, and I've seen their business grow and become part of a culture in Amherst. And when you go, you see everybody from young students, given middle school, high school, college students, young professionals, and older people in their business, and which is why they've been very, very successful, and they've been able to open a second branch of their business. The alcoholic portion of it is not, what we're not trying to do here is a bar scene. What we're trying to do is something more artisanal that actually complements the food that we're doing. So, for example, we're going to have very, very limited beer selections that are going to be from that part of the world, from the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern portion of the world, just to complement our food. Our alcoholic, we're not going to do the, Jack and Cokes and rum and Cokes and so on and so forth. It's going to be an artisanal, very, very unique menu of alcoholic beverages that, again, complements the food. The food and the bubble tea are the primary part of our business plan.
So is it beer and wine?
It's going to be, no, it'll also be a cocktails list as well.
Okay. I mean, I know you're applying for an all kinds.
For alcohol, yes.
Seems like you're in two separate directions here to me.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So you're very, very correct. In Asia, where the drink came from, it is for all ages, for all intents and purposes. I come from New York City, and in the city, bubble tea represents a hangout for not just, actually very little kids actually go because of the price differences. As with most things, there's a lower end of the spectrum and a higher end of the spectrum. And even at Amherst and at Northampton, where we currently run our businesses, we run on the higher end of the spectrum. So usually our target market is not, as you put it, little kids and children. We aim to have a place where people can have a drink without it always being alcoholic. We want to have a choice for them, a place where people can still mingle together. And our target market in all of our places is predominantly the college-age student. Because it gives it's a new experience. We try really hard not to target little kids, but it would be flat out like to say that they're not interested in our drinks. But for a large part of it, we do not associate ourselves at all in our current establishment nor in a future one with anybody under the age of 18.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a very, very complete answer. I appreciate that.
I'd like to follow up a little bit. Why is the all kinds? I mean, what are the hard alcohol drinks that become part of this experience?
Excuse me?
Why all kinds rather than beer and wine?
Oh, why all kinds? We feel that we can make some really good cocktails that are a derivative of our bubble teas. Not quite the same, but we want to introduce a kind of a classier joint, if I may, where people can enjoy new creations that are slightly tinged with a different flavor. And that's really what we're trying to bring here, is as my partner Reza has mentioned earlier, we don't really want to bring the Jack and Cokes and to associate ourselves with that college scene. That is not the purpose of our establishment, nor is it built that way. The whole marketing engine comes from a place where people can enjoy responsibly and have a drink to go with their dates or their hangouts. It's not that type. Do you know what I mean? Like, because when I think about
give me an example.
I have a concrete question. Do you put alcohol in your bubble tea?
Currently,
Yes.
we do not have a liquor license.
No, but if you get an all kinds license, will you put alcohol in your bubble tea?
No, that would be a whole separate. We will have a
Okay.
whole separate menu where it would be inspired by it, but we will not be putting bubble.
I see.
What is a bubble tea inspired cocktail, for example?
For example, in Asia, we use a lot of tea without alcohol. So it's not quite, one of the drinks that we've been working with is kind of a grapefruit, lime, mint kind of a mixture. So we would use the same signature flavors that we have. A lot of our flavors are very unique to us and cannot be readily reproduced, such as our lychee flavors or our yogurt flavors, which isn't predominantly found in a lot of places. A lot of people like to enjoy that. We first started with just, even our current stores, we started with just regular teas, and then people wanted, something for the summer, so we had to come out with a frozen variant and things like that. So that would be an example as kind of having like a mixture of the two genres, and in addition, or maybe a strawberry basil one, where we would, have like, crushed basil and with mixed with our strawberry tea and whatnot. So it's something you can't get the strawberry basil off. Off the regular menu. It would just be in, like Reza mentioned, a very specialized cocktail menu.
I have a feeling that for those of us of my generation at least, what he's describing is a kind of Asian version of a European cafe where I would have had coffee and possibly a cognac with it. But I could be wrong. So, shall we move forward? Oh, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak either in favor or in opposition to this application? Seeing none. Are we ready to take a vote? I can get back to my script, which I've buried. Okay. It's another case of getting the order right. I certainly am not voting entertainment first.
You can do
We need to do common vic and then, all right. So I'm going to move the items, I think I'd like to move them all together unless there's an objection, but we will take B first and following B, C.
You want to vote the common vic?
Common
No,
vic
I
is
will.
what's
I will. We'll do that one first.
The first paragraph before
The
A
unnumbered paragraph.
or B.
Right, right.
This is the common vic.
Oh, I see. I thought that was, oh, all right, fine. Okay, so we'll do the first one, and then we'll run the other ones as a group. I move that we approve the application of Limu Incorporated as Limu Tea House, Reza Rahmani, President, for a common victular license at 1032 Commonwealth Avenue. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
And then I move B, that we approve the application of Limu Incorporated, doing business as Limu Tea House, for an all kinds alcoholic beverages license as a common victular at 1032 Commonwealth Avenue. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And then finally, I'm going to move C and, no, let's see, I'll move A and C together. I think those, we can do at once. I move that we approve the application of Limu, doing business as Limu Tea House, holder of a common victular license, for an entertainment license at 1032 Commonwealth Avenue, and
To include radio.
to include radio. But we've consolidated those, so it doesn't matter anymore. And I also move that we approve the application of Limu Incorporated, holder of an all-kinds alcoholic beverage license as a common victular at 1032 Commonwealth Avenue, for the appointment of Joseph Deng as manager. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And one final thought, as a new license holder, we do recommend that you have alternate managers, so that the manager can get a day off sometimes, or even go to sleep. So
I would like
you,
that.
you may consider, as you get your establishment up and running, coming back, and it's a easy thing. You do not have to bring your attorney with you. It can be simply, we will do it. You just need to file an application with the names and qualifications of the alternate managers. Okay?
Definitely will.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Could I just take 1 minute to ask a question? When you say that we, no, we're done.
Not to you. He wants to ask me.
When you say that we've consolidated the entertainment
The
license.
entertainment fee is now in one, we've made one fee. We used to have little subcategories for different types of, we voted it. You voted
Right.
it.
Right, but
So now they get an entertainment license, which can include a range of television, radio,
and it could be.
taped music.
Yeah,
It
if they're
can be
using,
quite-
if they're doing loud,
Yeah.
loud rock music, I'd like to hear about it, though.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if you get an entertainment license now, does that mean that I could bring in my drums and?
No, that's
and
live.
my rock
No,
group?
no.
Okay.
No. It's
Okay.
it's the list of items that have previously been separately.
it's basically
Radio,
radio,
taped music, TV.
Okay.
And
This
if the,
one
ta-
was
if
radio.
the,
Yeah.
if the taped music or radio became a loud nuisance, you would be able to oppose that the same as you would any other loud nuisance.
Should probably point this out to
But-
Brenda.
Yeah, the new regs haven't been totally incorporated yet, I will admit, but that's the intention down the
But
road.
I guess my only, when you say for an entertainment license.
Yes.
How do we define, for the purpose of the license that we're going to issue, what is permitted within the scope of that license? I mean, is it going to say an entertainment? These people came in asking for radio.
Yes.
Are they going to, by virtue of getting an entertainment license, be able to do radio, television, and taped music?
My understanding is that all of those are under the broad heading entertainment and
And-
could be allowed.
And is there going to be now a separate license that's going to be entertainment license, live music?
There always has been a requirement that they come to us, a special request for live music.
Okay, but
I don't think that's under the entertainment license.
Okay,
I
I'm
have
just
to tell you
curious
on the
that
top of
it'll
my
be
head, I
clear that- yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I know that live entertainment is different from these entertainment licenses that I think have just accrued over time. In other words, originally, there was probably a radio, and then subsequently added television, and subsequently added tape music, and I don't know all the history there.
Okay,
But we used to have a fee for each component of those, and we do not anymore.
All right. My only suggestion would be that as we issue these licenses, somebody's now going to get an entertainment license, that it somehow be made clear that
And
it's not.
can include the following? I don't know. I
Or-
certainly agree, Selectman
my-
Bink, it's appropriate
Yeah,
for
I
us
mean-
to define what that means.
Right, and my greater
Yeah.
concern would be that it not be understood to include live music.
Got
which
it.
I think is a-
I'm pretty clear that the applicants will hear that when they go through the application process. But in terms of organizing the way we do our public votes, I personally want to emphasize they need to be reordered so that we always do common vic first. I would do common vic, alcoholic beverage manager, and then anything else, because that's the order of magnitude, so to speak, of the licensures. We're going to get it better. Anyway, it is 9:15, and I believe we have 2 more items before us, and, oh, gosh, I've lost my list.
Advisory Council on Public Health.
Right, I know what it is, I just don't know where it is.
You have 2 incumbents and a new candidate. with
Right,
no
and we
space.
can only vote 2.
It's 21.
Yeah, all right.
I have it if you.
No, I'm sorry.
Read on with me.
I don't seem to be able to find it. All right, well, we're going to turn this over to the town administrator anyway. We have 2 appointments, 2 commissions, board and commission appointments to make, and Mr. Kleckner will lead us through the vote on the Advisory Council for Public Health, where, as Selectman Benka mentioned, we have no vacancies and 3 applicants, 2 of which are incumbents.
Yes. For the Advisory Council on Public Health, we have 2 expiring terms, 2 incumbent candidates interested in reappointment, and a new candidate expressing interest. So I will read the incumbent candidates first. Bruce Cohen.
Aye.
Cheryl Leffman.
Aye.
All right, so Mr. Cohen and Ms. Leffman will be the appointees. And then...
Could I-
Arts Commission.
Could I,
Yeah.
let me,
Go ahead.
could we appoint an alternate?
Well, they have to ask. I don't think we're allowed to do that on our own, and we did urge them to consider it. But I think they have to want to have an alternate.
All right.
That was my
Yeah,
understanding.
because I
Okay.
She was
will
certainly,
say
the
Ms.
additional candidate was certainly well qualified.
Oh,
Ms.
sure.
Stoddard was
Yeah, right.
certainly,
What I heard, if I was reading between the lines, is that they felt they could find good volunteer opportunities for the candidate who could not be appointed. So,
And-
we did say to them...
Yeah, they have 2 organizations.
We'd be happy to give you an all,
I know.
we'd happy to vote one, but we didn't have that request.
Well, if anybody's out there listening,
Right,
if you want an alternate, ask for it.
exactly. And I think it's perfectly, I mean, it doesn't require anything special, it just needs to be a request that we would grant, that's all. All right, the next one is Brookline Commission for the Arts, and we have many vacancies, and I believe 1 candidate? or
Yes,
2?
we have multiple vacancies with 1 candidate expressing interest. It's Leah Cohen. I would recommend putting her in a slot for the 2016 expiring date. So I will read off Leah Cohen.
Aye.
All right, very well.
All right, and this concludes the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, the 21st of January.
Drive safely.
Yes.